we begin?
Yes.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, so for everyone who's listening and watching, because we are both audio and video podcasts with our beloved audience, we are with Ashley Malone, who is the founder and creative director of Ashley and Malone.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun because what I felt was important with the audience that we have, a lot of them are industry experts and they're in the industry or they're getting into the wedding industry, and they want to know how to brand themselves, how to market themselves, and how to make a presence. So I think it's important to shed a little light onto how to stand out and how to increase your website traffic and how to build a brand strategy. Now, this is a little bit closer to my heart because I went to school for advertising.
Oh, no way.
I did.
Very
so
cool.
I love this portion of the discussion and this portion of the business. So that's why I'm really thrilled to have you here today. So for everyone, why don't you give a little background into how you started your branding and design agency?
So I was working full-time for another company, and basically throughout my whole career, as soon as I started school for graphic design, I ran my own freelance business, and it kind of was going down a really good path. But I had noticed that the clients that we were getting, it was very like engineers and corporate type clients and just things that weren't super inspiring to me. And so like a lot of wedding professionals, when I started planning my own wedding and really getting involved, I had no idea of kind of the style and the beauty and the aesthetics of everything. And I just connected so deeply with that type of look and feel. And as we were hiring vendors and working with people, I just saw so much potential within those clients too, of how they were representing themselves online or with their branding. And I just thought maybe this is an opportunity that we can explore so that we can help these people, we can design work that excites me. And we also had the component of my husband, Dallas, and partner. He is a website developer. And one of the things that we heard from a lot of the wedding vendors that we were working with was, I can't update my website by myself, or, you know, so-and-so is MIA, or I can't get anything done. And I thought it was such a unique perspective that we could offer kind of like a seamless one-stop shop. There really wasn't anything like that, especially for the Canadian market when we got started. And so we kind of had the idea for Ashley Malone, and we launched a landing page, and the rest just kind of flowed naturally.
That's amazing.
From there. Yeah.
So it's a passion that you decided to turn into a business.
Yes. 100%.
And just to back up, your husband's name is Dallas Malone.
Yes.
That is a rock star name. Is it not?
It is.
That's a rock star name. That's funny. Cool name.
Yeah.
Cool business name.
Yeah.
Really love it. And I've seen what you've done, and it's really brilliant.
Thank
you. You really do have an eye for design. There's no question. And so what year did that start?
So we got married in 2012. So it was kind of like that weird cusp, you know what I mean? So I'd say the idea started in 2012, like just after we got married. So I'd say July-ish, and then we were fully launched by, I would say like the winter of the following year. So we kind of did little things like I hired a calligrapher to do my logo, and we just put up a landing page. And then basically, I think it was over Christmas break, I started my marketing side of things. And at that time, Twitter was really cool. And it was where a lot of wedding industry people were hanging out. And in particular, a lot of the brands who I was working with for my own wedding, I had noticed that they were on there as well. So I just started following people. And someone really big in LA kind of took notice of us. And it just kind of went really well from there. And opposed to targeting Canadian clients, which is what we had really started out to do, we started getting a lot of American clients as well, which is really great. And
because you have a presence in the American market, or is it mostly LA, or like
so I would say 80% of our clients are US, 10% are European, and then 10% Canadian. Wow. But we're definitely starting to work with a lot more Canadian, especially in Toronto and on the West Coast as well. So that's really exciting. It's nice. We love working with local people, and then we also get to meet them.
Yeah.
Which is
well, that's what
thing.
I was going to say. It's kind of interesting in your line of work because you can be remote.
Yes.
So you can have clients in the States or overseas, and you don't necessarily have to have meetings with them because you can do FaceTimes with Skype, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Like one of our biggest clients was in the UK, and I think launched 8 websites for them. Wow. Never talked to her. Like literally never talked to her on the phone.
Just emails.
Yeah, just emails.
Cool.
So
that's trust.
It's kind of crazy how that can happen, but it's possible.
So then what are you mostly do? You can actually, let's walk through like the steps of like how someone might approach you and like what you do once you chat with someone.
Yes. So we exclusively do branding and website development with some digital marketing and kind of client experience collateral items to support those items that we're creating for clients. A typical process is either they find us online or through Instagram or through a referral. Check out our website, get in touch. We have a direct booking link on our site that you can just kind of go and make a consultation. And we speak with every single client except for that one.
Yeah, right.
Which is funny. Before we would book with them, and now it's a really customized process. So we take a lot of time to get to know the client ahead of time, figure out, what's going on in their business. Usually there's something going wrong, not necessarily a huge wrongness, but there's usually some sort of reason of why they're reaching out to us. So we try and figure out what that is and then how it is that we can help them, and then tailor our services that best represent their goals and kind of how we can help them get there. So when someone first contacts me, I go to their website, I look at their brand, I look at their social, and I really make that first impression. And that's really kind of what I use to guide that first phone call. But first and foremost, I think the most important piece of that is to actually listen to the person. I actually do very little talking on that kind of first consultation call, and just really soak in everything that they have to say and kind of what their struggles are, what their fears are, because there's a lot of fears in the branding and website process too. And get their excitement too, because a lot of times this is their first time investing in something at this level. And then from there we kind of figure out the services that they need and send them a proposal and keep our fingers crossed that it has a good fit, and then kind of dive in.
What do you think is one of the biggest fears that people have?
I think the investment is a fear with a lot of people. It's so funny to me because some people, it's just like they know, they expect it, and they're like, yes, I'm 100% in, I don't care, send me the bill. And then there's other people who are like, they're a little bit more hesitant, and it's usually because they worked really hard, or maybe it is a bit more of a stretch for their investment. And I also think there's people don't really know what the branding and website process entails. And I think if you can find someone that you really connect with, and it's not just like a business transaction too, I think getting that comfort level straight from the beginning is such an important piece, and really kind of puts those fears at ease about diving into such a big process and changing the look and the feel of what they're going for with their aesthetic.
What if they're new?
Yes.
And they're like, okay, I'm starting this business. Would you look at their style of how they dress, and would you ever ask for like photos of their house? That might be too creepy, but like if you came in here and you see this kind of aesthetic, does it give you an outlook of like what I might like from a design perspective? Yeah.
So one of the things that we actually have really developed, so that was a way that we used to approach things a lot, is we kind of based it a lot on the style of the business owner and different things like that. But I'd say it's evolved so much over the years, because I think, as we mentioned, the market is so saturated, it's really hard to stand out. And we base a lot of strategy now on who their client is. So while we appreciate who they are as a person and their personal style and all those types of things, we really want to see how that translates and makes sense for their business and their brand. Because if we designed based off of how they dressed every day, but that's not who their client is, I don't think what we would do would be as successful for them going forward. Because a lot of times, as a professional, you're not always putting 100% of yourself into your personal interactions. Like everybody's kind of has like a scale, right? Of like, maybe they're like 50% professional and like 50% themselves, or however it might lie. And then there's people who are like just have big loud personalities, and those are the clients that they attract, and I think that makes sense for them. So we kind of look at a whole bunch of different things, but inspiration is a huge part of that. But we tend to do it with questions, so asking them to describe different elements for us. And then also we use Pinterest in a really kind of like intentional way, where we always have them try and keep their audience and their ideal client in mind when we approach the design.
So it's more about, what you're saying is it's more about who their client is and who they want to attract as opposed to them. Unless maybe you're building a personal brand.
100%.
Then you're going to go with, it needs to be a little bit of, which is what you were saying, 50% personal and 50% professional. So maybe you're doing a little bit of both in that sense.
I'd say for every single client that we've ever worked with, that scale leads so differently. Like there's no two percentages that we've ever found to be the same. And for us, it's really a blend of what their goals are, what their business is, and their personal kind of design aesthetic too. And we kind of pull out all those different elements and decide how much we're going to show.
Got it.
So how much about your personal style is important to your audience and important in allowing you to stand out in a saturated market, and how much of that can we pull out visually so that it makes sense for your business.
I always wonder if it's, especially when in this industry, because there's a portion of it that is about the connection that you create with your couple or with your client. So if you're a planner, or if it's you and on the forefront of the business, how much of yourself do you want to put out? Do you ever like give a guideline of like that kind of information?
We do to some degree. So again, we look at their goals. So if it's a personal brand, like you kind of mentioned, and they're say they're a wedding planner and it's just one of them and they never plan to be bigger than the one of them, then I think it makes sense if their clients are drawn to like-minded things that they are, to kind of put a little bit more of themselves out there. And I think it's also personality based too. Like a lot of people just aren't comfortable giving themselves 100%. It's kind of like what people show on Instagram stories. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some people who like you never see, and then there's other people who are just like in their pajamas with like no makeup on, and they're like, hey, this is my life. And people appreciate that for different reasons, right? So I think it's different for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. So what are, for brand strategy, so let's go back to this person who is just starting the business, starting fresh. So what's kind of the first step when they're looking at developing their brand? What's like the strategy development? Yeah,
so I think when you're first starting, you want to think about your style. So what it is about what you can do to really translate that to the people that you want to work with. Figure out what your strengths are and kind of what your difference is. So there are wedding planners who are phenomenal at design and planning. There are wedding planners who are amazing at logistics and hiring out the decor. There's so many different segments of the market that you can really expand upon. So I think finding out what your kind of niche is and really honing in on what that unique element is will help you create a brand and a business that attracts the type of work that you want to create. So I think that's really important, knowing who your audience is. So what are the price points? What's the demographic? What's their age? Who are they getting married to? Where are they getting married? Really focusing in on those fine details and getting as focused as you can. And then once you have that established, building your portfolio is obviously such a huge aspect. Investing in photography is a big one. And then once you have those elements in place, I think just get a logo up. Don't overthink it. Do something that's fairly simple. Whether you have to hire a designer off of Etsy or, do it yourself. I honestly don't think it's worth investing in a full-fledged rebrand and custom website when you're just starting out in business, because I think years 1 to 3 is such an evolution and you learn so much, and the client that you work with for that first year probably won't be close to your client that you work with in that third year. So I just think there's so many changes that happen during that time that it's just not worth it. But I think don't overthink it. Get something up and online focus on the work that you're doing, and I think your brand will just naturally evolve, but I don't think it's something that you necessarily have from day one.
Right. Because I think a lot of times people can go into like paralysis where there are so many decisions you have to make. What color do you want? Which logo do you want? Because you're getting so much thrown at you. But if you sit in that paralysis, you're not going to do anything.
Nothing.
And so it's just choose one and make it work.
Yeah.
And you can always change. It's not set in stone.
Yes.
Although if you are going to, but I mean, at that point, you're just testing things out. So try it out, right? Before. And then once you feel confident in the baseline you've built, then maybe approach an expert and say, okay, this is the baseline. Yeah. And now we're ready to invest to create something
Make
a
money
little more elevated.
Before you spend money. I don't really agree with you have to spend money to like I do with some circumstances, but like when you're starting out, like you're probably like if you're living in Toronto, like you're paying a fortune in rent and like all these other different things, and like can you really invest like thousands of dollars in an experience that might not last you or might not represent you in a year's time? Because as you know, as a business owner, like think of your first year in business, like how much did you change? Like probably a lot. A lot. So I just think don't overthink it. Get it out there. And I kind of feel like the true entrepreneur just does it. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to get it done and
just make your decision.
Yes. It'll just hold you up if you keep going back to it. Just do it.
Just do it. Just like Nike. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Do you have a favorite brand yourself?
Oh.
What brands inspire you?
Oh, gosh, that's such a good question.
I've become obsessed with looking at brands. I love looking at how people run their business from a marketing. Yeah. So I'll go into a store and they have point systems and I'm always asking the teller, I'm like, so what is this point system? And I'm trying to understand, because I feel like that's a new thing that people are really introducing where you spend so many dollars, you get so many points, you get a free product. Yes. And I think that's an interesting concept. But it's now, because I have such a love for this field. Yeah. It's just something that I'm constantly looking at. But what brands do you think are very intelligent?
Oh, so I tend to lean on the classics for my like personal style. So I've always been drawn to like the big fashion houses like Chanel and Hermes and all of those big ones. They're definitely, when you're considering the luxury market, they are kind of like the pillars of the industry in that regard. I love hotel chains too. Yeah. I just feel like the ones who do it right do such a phenomenal job at the client experience part. So if you can, like we just stayed at the Drake in Prince Edward County.
I'm going there shortly.
Yeah, maybe they can sponsor. Yeah. But they blew us away. Like honestly, and I'd say that's hard to do. And everything was so customized. It was relaxed. It wasn't like fussy, but it was nice and good quality. And the food, I don't know, their service really
stuck out.
It totally stuck out. So I think serviced, hospitality-based businesses always really kind of surprise me and are ones to look up to who do it well. So I always kind of look at hotel brands too. Rosewood is another one that I've always been inspired by. They have really amazing copywriting. So if you ever look on their websites, they do a really phenomenal job at kind of targeting their ideal client. And trying to think if there's any others. I love checking out like indie brands too, like up and comers.
Because it does evolve. Like those brands are tried and true, and they've been around for years and years and years. But there's always somebody who's making their way up, but doing something a little different. Yes, maybe they're in a different category a little bit, but there's so much evolving now, right? With 100%. Design and everything.
I know it is really interesting to see, and there's a really cool website called typewolf.com and it's based basically on typography and fonts and things like that, but they feature websites who do typography in an amazing way. And so for me, it's a huge inspiration because I get to see brands and businesses that I would have never found on my own kind of all over the world. So I think it's a really cool site to check out as well.
Awesome. Let's go back. So this individual, I'm going to stick on this until we walk through, but this individual who is starting the business has the blank canvas. What's kind of an exercise for them, or maybe a task that you task them with in order for them to find out who their ideal client is?
Sure. So this is something that actually I did with my first business coach that I hired. I think I was a year 1 or 2 into business. Her name's Heather Crabtree, and she was really great. So she had me do this exercise to figure out who my ideal client was, and now I recommend it to anybody who is basically just wanting to figure it out. And I think such a big component of finding out who your audience or your ideal client is having some sort of realistic imagination too, and just really base it off of real people. And a lot of times it can evolve throughout your business, but every year I do this exercise, and every year it surprises me, and it can allow you to make subtle tweaks and changes in your business so that you're kind of adhering to that vision and that particular client. So basically what you do is an audit of all of your clients of the past year. You write them all down, and money is always such a big thing for people too, especially if you want to get into the luxury market or you want to expand upon what you're doing right now. So I always say list all of the people who you've worked with, and then list how much you charge them. So put an X beside all the people who maybe weren't a good fit, or you had challenges with, or just personality wise, maybe it wasn't your favorite experience, whether it was the design or whatever it might be. And then put a check mark besides all of the people, excuse me, that you really loved working with, like the people who were exceptional, that really stood out, that you created great relationships with. And then you're going to list out all of the people who you had great experiences with, list the budgets, because I think sometimes you can really start to notice a correlation there as well, and really think about that person in their core being. So think about their personality, their demographics. What particularly was it about this person that really stood out to you and made them a good fit? And once you start to narrow them down, create your ideal client persona. So really kind of combine all those different elements and create a person, and that is your brand person. And that is who your ideal client is, and who you can start to make meaningful decisions when it comes to your brand aesthetic or your marketing directives. Little things like, are they on Instagram? Like, is that ideal client on Instagram? If they're not, don't spend money on, Instagram ads. Or where are they shopping? Where are they hanging out? Are they into indie brands? Are they into brands that you find on Bloor Street, like whatever it is. And then you really kind of want to target your marketing and your branding and your website efforts to honor this person. And then I also think it's just as important to know who you don't want to work with. So once you have the positive side, then you can kind of go back and see what are some of the common characteristics of that person where it didn't quite work out or you weren't excited about. And then those are the tools that you can use as your kind of guiding red flag, if you will, because everybody has them. And there's nothing wrong with having a red flag with a client. Like, it's something that everybody in business comes into play. And then you can kind of start to identify who those two people are. And I think it can really help you continue to evolve your business, opposed to just staying with your current clients or whoever is just coming to you. You can really tweak and change your branding and your website so that you're moving upwards, opposed to just kind of staying stagnant.
So it's almost like identifying a little bit of consumer behavior and what they're doing, where they live.
Yep.
Because 100%. You need to be in front of their eyes.
Yes.
So where are they living? So how, if you haven't worked with anyone yet, but you know that they might be somewhere, how do you find out where people are? Is there a secret?
So, no, there's definitely no secret. I don't think there's any secret.
Do you think Instagram creeping in, not a creepy way, but like to see what people are interested in and who they're following gives you insight?
Sure, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you can stalk people all you want. You can follow those hashtags, and you can tag and comment and pin, and you might get lucky. And usually there's a lot of luck, like when you're getting started. Usually it's like some sort of luck factor that happens, and like that's your moment. You know what I mean? Like you land your first client, or you finally get a high budget, and it's just a really sweet space to be in as a business owner. But yeah, I don't think there's any like secrets when you're first getting started. To me, I kind of have an unpopular opinion that I think you just need to like get out there and do the work.
Just do it.
I think you just need to do it and experience it before you can have these aspirational clients and
network.
Huge.
I can't stress how important that is, especially in this industry.
100%.
Because the thing is, like, you might be your own individual, but it's such a team effort on a wedding day, and everybody's working together. And if like from video, if video and photo don't get along, that's going to affect your referrals down the road. And it's like, 100%. Well, why aren't you getting along? So everyone should be really kind of dissecting what happened on the wedding day if there was issues, and say, okay, well, I didn't communicate this was going to happen, then we got in a fight. So next time I need to communicate this is going to happen, and then I won't get in a fight with this photographer, and our referrals are going to come in. So it's like there's a lot of reflection that needs to happen after wedding day. Instead of just being upset at a certain vendor, you need to just kind of understand what the issue was, if there was one. But my goal is like creating this harmony between photographers and video, if you can't tell. See, I am very fortunate to have really good relationships with all the photographers we work with. But I just hear stories, and we're both striving for this creative thing. So it's just trying to like bring everybody together a little bit more, and just communication is like the key. Back to branding. So what do you consider the difference between branding and marketing?
Oh, light bulb moment. Just kidding. So I think branding is who you are, what you project, and what you represent as a business. I think marketing is selling, pitching, maintaining, that sort of thing. So I think they work cohesively together, but they are very separate entities.
They are very separate. Everything needs to be consistent. Talk to me about consistency with your brand.
Everything.
Because this is key.
It's essential. Like, I would say it is probably the number one thing that you can do, whether you're starting out or you're a veteran in the industry. Consistency is the hugest thing. So I would say if you're in that 1 to 3 year phase, do an audit of everywhere you are online. Like, look at all of your vendor listings, look at your logos, whether it's on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Google. Like, does that match the logo that's on your website? Do you have 10 different fonts and 10 different shades of pink? Or, you know what I mean? Like, really find out what it is that you're projecting out there, and then make efforts to start being consistent with all of those different pieces aesthetically. And then there's also the consistency within your voice, like your brand voice, how you're speaking, how you're talking, how you're describing your services. Those are all kind of pieces that are intrinsically connected.
Do you think also like figuring out what your strength is?
Yes.
And so, like, some people may not be good at speaking. Some people may not be good at writing. But figuring out and start eliminating, okay, I'm stronger either on video, so I'm going to make videos where I'm going to sit on my couch or whatever. Or I'm stronger in type, so I'm going to write a blog. And so once you can narrow down what your strength is, then you're able to make that the consistent part, which is aligned with you. And then if you have staff or someone else, find out what they're good at, maybe, 100%. And then delegate a few other things.
I don't know. I don't think there's like too much of like wrong answers. You know what I mean? Like, that's why sometimes I feel like people get so hyper focused on like, it has to be this or it has to be done a certain way. And I think there's so many examples of successful business owners who do it their own way because that's what their strength lies, and that's what their difference is. So when we're also talking about branding and standing out in a saturated market, if you can identify what your unique difference is, and I'm not talking about like I provide a professional and personalized service, because I feel like every wedding vendor says that. But like, what is like, but
I can.
I know you can, and I know you're really good at it, but like it's expected. That's an expectation. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily what makes you different. So I think if you can really hone in and figure out what that difference is and use that to your advantage, and that's kind of your unique selling position within the marketplace, and how you can start to stand out and for people to recognize you.
I think a goal with the film business that I operate is just having it be where someone might be online or I put my phone on silent. And this is what happened. The goal, basically, like the goal with that business is that somebody can be really quickly going through Instagram and see something and go, oh, that's
Corinne
Yes.
McDonald's films and the team and their work kind of thing. And I think that's the goal with branding in general, is that someone can look at a photo or look at
Yes.
whatever you've done and be like, oh, that looks like something that they would have done. 100%. I like playing that game on Instagram. Is like, if you're not...
Whose work is it?
Whose work is it? You see a photo and you're like, this looks like so-and-so.
Yep.
And then sure enough, you get it right. And you know that they're on par with, or on point, I should say,
Completely.
with their branding, right?
Yeah.
With their branding.
It's a big aspect. That's such an important thing to note. I love that. Good for you.
Yes.
Yes.
Golden star.
Nailed it.
Golden star. Okay, so talk to me about so you guys are doing website design as well.
Yeah, we do lots. I'd say like the branding is obviously an important aspect of everything that we do, but the websites are sometimes the things that excite me the most, to be honest.
Are you guys in charge or working with the SEO and that aspect of it, or just the design of it?
So we do everything in-house. So we do the design, the development, and then we started, I'd say over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, recognizing the need for SEO. A lot of time, like it was pretty organic before. So we do include like a basic SEO kind of experience, I guess you can call it, into all of our websites. But it's very different than hiring an SEO company. So you can have great SEO on your site. You can do it by yourself if you add a plugin to your site, and you can add in your keywords, your phrases, all those different things. So you're basically setting up your website for success, for Google to find you. And then above and beyond that, a dedicated SEO company is someone who is ongoing doing work within the back end of your site.
Oh, I see. So you can set it up. And
so
then
we set up the basics
Yeah.
so that everything is done properly. It can be read by Google, sitemaps, all these more technical things. And for most clients, I would say it's very successful, and it just kind of organically happens for them. And then others, depending on the type of business, like sometimes venues need to invest in SEO more so than another vendor would. So it really just kind of depends on where you are at in the market. But definitely do the basics first, and then decide if you're not getting website traffic, you really need to look at, sometimes it can be your website too. Sometimes it's not just the SEO portion.
When you're building a website, what do you think are the top 3 crucial things to have on the landing page?
Okay, great question.
Thank you.
So your logo, top and center. If you can include what you do and where you're located. So I think one of the most frustrating things from a user and a vendor side is if you go to a website and you have no idea where they are in the world. Because I think with Instagram and people just coming through Google Images in so many different places, you really need to tell people what you do and where you're located. Otherwise, obviously, they're going to bounce off your page and you're not really connecting with them. You're not really making that first kind of connection in their brain that they want to stay, and this is something that I need and I'm interested in. So I'd say that's really important. Some sort of showcase of your work is really key. I have different recommendations in terms of what type of photography that different segments of the wedding industry should be featuring on their homepage. One thing I always say for wedding planners is focus on your work. Like if you are a wedding designer, make sure you're not just showing like the shoes or bride and groom. Really focus in on what makes you different in your actual design aesthetic, because that will naturally attract more of your clientele. And a really easy navigation. So I'm talking like above the fold, the things that should really be into place. So before anybody has to scroll, they should be able to see your logo, what you do, your location, and a piece of your work.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about multi-image landing pages?
Oh, totally fair.
Totally cool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think if it's done in a polished way, then why not?
It gives you variety.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. And
Yeah.
social media at the bottom or top of a
Bottom.
website?
I'm a
Bottom.
total bottom.
Why? Why?
I think, okay, so it takes now so much work to get someone to go to your website and what you're doing. So say they come to you from a Google image and they go to your site, then they go to check you out on Instagram. Fair, cool, but then you're inundating them, yes, on a social network that you don't own. And sure, there's DMs and things like that, but I just think that the whole purpose of a website is to represent your brand and your business and to share your story and really kind of entice them and make that emotional connection. And you're not going to do that directly just through a social channel, in my perspective, in my opinion.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I think it's important for a user to be able to scroll at least your homepage, and then you can tuck it into the footer. You can do a beautiful Instagram feed, so you feel like you have that social component. They're seeing updated work, but it's not the first thing that they're clicking on, because otherwise they can easily forget you, especially if you don't have your logo on your social media. Like, the whole purpose of your logo and your branding is to make that memorability for a client, so that when they go look at 10 different photography websites, that they remember, maybe it's the color, maybe you have like a unique color tone that they've really connected with, or a logo that there's an element within that logo that, you know, they remember, and then they go away and then they get lost in this like crazy maze of...
I don't know how many times that's happened to me. Now that you say that, I'm like, I've gone to websites and then I click over onto Instagram on the top right, and then boom, I'm in Instagram, and then boom, I'm off.
Yes.
And I haven't hit a contact page, and I haven't done the deep dive.
You haven't
that
seen the person's
meant
face
to do when I went to the site.
Yeah.
So putting them at the bottom.
And I would
like
say,
that.
and one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, especially if you built your website yourself, double check this. If your links outgoing from your website don't open up in a new tab, you have lost the user 1,000%. Because oftentimes, like if you have, like say Instagram, you'll open a new tab and it will, but your website will still be active, right?
Yeah.
But
You're saying if it redirects away from your site?
If it redirects on that same tab, you've completely lost that client or that user or whoever it is that you're marketing to.
Hot tips.
Yeah,
Ashley.
that's a really good tip.
That's a good
I
tip.
run into it all the time, and I'm like,
You want to know what? I had a really great tip. A couple years ago, once I started the site. So if you have a site and in the top search bar, there is a circle with an I beside your name.
Yeah.
That means you have not done the proper, lockdown of your site. Do you know about this? And so you technically should have a lock, because what happens is it means it's an open site. I don't know what the proper terminology is.
no, it's called an SSL certificate.
Okay, see? I knew you would know. So if you haven't, what is the process?
Purchased one, you have to purchase one from your hosting company.
Okay, so I am always looking at when I go to sites if there's a lock or not, because otherwise your information is not protected.
Yes.
So if someone was charging for their credit card through that site and it had a circle with an I, that means you're more vulnerable.
For sure.
Right?
So it used to be something that only e-commerce sites had.
Yeah. And
then I'd say the last probably recently, like 2 years, it's the difference of the URL too. So if you see the HTTPS, that's secure. If there's no S, it's not secure. So that's another kind of way to tell.
Would it be secure? Would there be a lock beside it? But it would
There
still
can,
be...
it depends on the browser, I think, that you're in.
Right. Okay.
But the S means secure.
Because now, since I've heard that, I am always kind of keeping an eye on if people have SSL certificate.
For sure.
Locked
you're
site.
in, now you know.
I knew there was a techie tip. Let's switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about rebranding. And so you have an established brand, and maybe it was your name, and maybe now you're considering, or you have a team, and you're like, okay, let's move this in a different direction. What are some of the steps to take, or when do you pull the trigger and rebrand?
So I think it's different for every business, and some kind of telltale signs that it might be time to rethink your brand aesthetic and your brand identity would be, one, if you've outgrown it. So very similar to what you're saying, you were at one point a one woman or one man or whomever type of business. So you're solo and then you're expanding your team, and it no longer makes sense to have just your name representing. Another point of that is to think about your future too. Like, do you plan to sell the company? Do you plan to hand it off to somebody else? Nobody likely wants to buy a company with somebody else's name on it. So that's something to consider, especially for people who have been in the industry for a long time. If you're no longer attracting your ideal client, is a really good thing. It's likely that you might not be projecting the right thing to that particular audience. So that's a point when you want to consider a rebrand. And if business isn't going well, or sometimes if it just doesn't feel like you any longer, or kind of your business. So I think there's a lot of confidence that goes into how your brand kind of looks and feels in the marketplace. And a lot of times if you start, you're doing really well and you're making great money, and you just no longer feel that connection to your brand, you don't feel confident about it, and it's starting to distract you from maybe making new price jumps or pitching to a vendor who you've always wanted to work with, and now you feel like you're at that level, but you're like, oh crap, what if they go to my website and they see it hasn't been updated in 5 years or whatever it might be. But I think those are all kind of important things to note if you're considering it. But I don't do it just because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
I think it's a trendy thing right now.
Is it?
You think? Oh, branding?
No, but rebranding?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
People, well,
I think it's a trendy thing. I don't know how many times we've had clients who we've launched like one of their competitors, and then all of their competitors come like, oh, I saw what you did for so and so, so I want to do that too. And like,
right.
I see. So like it just kind of
it's
sparks,
like keeping up kind of mentality of
100%.
I see what you're saying.
So
okay.
really, and find someone who's going to give you like real answers. Like sometimes you actually don't need a rebrand.
Right.
Sometimes you just need like a subtle refresh of certain elements too. So there's all different scales of what rebranding or refreshing or that you can actually do in your business, and it doesn't always mean changing absolutely everything.
And so this ties into it, and I love this topic. It's my favorite, storytelling as a brand.
Oh, love it.
Because if you're going to rebrand, you're like, what's your take on, if you're going to rebrand, are you going to make an announcement? Are you going to do a countdown? Are you going to share this whole new thing as if it's a launch, right? And so what kind of story are you telling with that? Like, do you have suggestions for people of how they should storytell?
Yeah, so we work with launches, I'd say with almost all of our clients, and how they transition. So whether they're changing their name is a bigger deal than just creating a new brand and a logo. So if you're changing your actual brand name, I think there's a lot that you need to divulge to your audience on social media, through your website, whatever channels that you're kind of out there, that change is coming. So I think the first step is teasing. So teasing some content, teasing some different elements, letting people really know why you're making a change. Because I think I notice this all the time on Instagram. You're like scrolling, you're like, who the is this person?
Right.
And then, so I think in your Instagram profile, like it's nice to say like formerly was,
right,
or changed or whatever it is. So I think there's some sort of communication that you have to do on social media now that you never really had to think about before. So that's an important thing to note, and telling people the story. I think that's such an important piece to who you are as a brand and your values. And if you can kind of project that story and let people know why you're making these changes and why you're excited about them, I think it's great. So I don't recommend doing anything too soon into the process. So usually I'd say 1 to 2 weeks before you're set to launch. Otherwise, people are going to forget. They're not going to care.
Right.
I'd say kind of the closer to it, and then you kind of build that anticipation, and then you can push it out. A lot of times I find in the industry, more vendors are concerned about it than actual couples. Mm-hmm. So consider that too. Who are you actually doing this for? Are you doing it for vendors to notice you, or are you actually doing it for your audience? Because
right,
most importantly, because the wedding industry, like your name is important, obviously, and your brand name is, but you're getting new clients all the time. They're not always, the same clients that you're working with over and over again. So XYZ person might not even know or care. Yeah. You know what I mean? That you were someone else before. So what
about if I was married 2 years ago?
Okay.
And I refer a company, and I'm like, oh, you should go with Blackwall Cinema.
Yes.
And so they type in Blackwall Cinema. Should they redirect their site for up to a year?
100%.
2 years? How many years do you redirect?
Oh, we don't really put a timeline on it. I would say like a few years for sure, because I do think that happens a lot. Even think about, if you're working with this great family, and the oldest is getting married, and then the sibling maybe 4 or 5 years You know,
right, because then you're known
and maybe
as,
your email's changed by
Yeah.
that point because your
Yeah.
URL has changed in all those different aspects. So I actually don't think there's anything wrong with keeping a redirect. It doesn't hurt anything, especially with press features and all these different publications that you could be showcasing online. Just keeping that redirect active, I think, is a good thing to do. Maybe 5 years, 4, whatever. Retire it fair.
Do you want to know a great little story? I have 5 redirects.
Do you?
On my website right now because my name is so ridiculously
so you keep changing
tricky.
it?
So I don't change anything. So my name, the way you spell it, and I get Kareen, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I get double R, I get one N, I get MacDonald. So I have 5 domains that are all the misspellings.
That's smart.
Of
Good
my
for
name,
you.
and they all redirect back.
That's smart.
And even when I Google in my name, it'll come up with like something crazy.
Different
that
ones?
Is, yeah, not
That's
correct
funny.
at all. Anyways, just a little side note. It's Corinne, everyone.
Corinne.
One
Noted.
R, 1 R, 2 N's. Anywho, so I exercised the sticker question on Instagram.
Oh, fun.
To get some engagement and see what questions people had about branding and marketing. So,
Sure.
are you ready to do a little
totally
Q&A
ready.
from our audience? Here we go. Number 1, and this is pretty much what we just spoke about, but best way to promote a company after rebrand. What if people are confused? So what if they're confused about it?
Sure. So I think you have to look at who's confused first, and kind of decide where. So we kind of talked about the difference between vendors and users or audience or clients or what have you. I think blogging, if you do have a blog on your site, is a really great introduction and a place to communicate to your audience what's happened. Your about page, we have a lot of clients who will say basically in the first paragraph, formerly so-and-so.
Right.
And what that does also for SEO purposes is if someone happens to Google in your old name because they were referred, you have a chance of then coming up, and then that can be a direct page that they can read and kind of find out more information. I think you have to let people know. So social media is huge, and getting press around it too. We haven't really talked a lot about press yet.
No.
But I think press is such a big component in a rebrand and really gives publications something exciting and new to pitch as well. So
what's an example of press when you say press?
I'm thinking like features. So whether it's getting your work in, whether it's getting mentioned as expert articles or that sort of thing, anytime you can kind of get your name in there and say, so-and-so of so-and-so, it kind of immediately starts out that new recognition of the new brand name.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the About Us section? How do you feel about photos, videos for story? Do you have preference on that, or just whatever information you want to give is a good idea?
Like on the website?
On the website.
Like in terms of just general, like what should be on your About page?
Yeah. Is there anything specific that's a winner or a loser?
Yeah. There's lots of winners, lots of
like, have you seen an About Us and then you're like, no.
Bad choice. Yeah, for sure. So one is figure out the copywriting. We haven't spoken about copywriting too. So
there's so much we could talk about.
Oh, I know.
How much time do you
have?
Like
copywriting is huge. Find a copywriter.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say there. So having somewhat of your story. So we talked a lot about like brand story and what it is that you're about. I think before you kind of dive in immediately to who you are, talk about what you represent. What is it about your brand that makes you guys unique? And then filter into your bio section. If you don't have a photo on your website, you absolutely need a photo of yourself. It's just great to build that personal connection. People want to know who they're working with. 15 years ago, nobody knew who anybody was on their website, but now it's such a key component. And get a professional headshot. Don't use your wedding photo or a selfie or a night out partying with your friends, like whatever it is. Invest in a good photographer to take a professional headshot of you, and it's something that you can utilize for lots of different businesses.
I also feel that every few weeks you should put up a picture of yourself or your team on your Instagram.
Yes.
Because I've gone to pages and it has somebody's name, like similar with myself, but then I'm like, who is this person? And you start digging because you want to see the face.
Yep.
And a lot of times I kind of get frustrated. I'm like, I don't know who this is, and I move on.
Yep.
So I think reintroducing yourself once a month.
That's such a good
Just say, here's a new headshot of me or whatever.
Yeah.
But like give some FaceTime so people understand, because I've gone digging before to find out who the team is or who this person is, and I can't find it, and I get frustrated and I just leave.
Yeah.
So like share who you are.
I agree.
Right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Good tips.
Thanks.
Okay, next question. Next question is, dun, 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 dun. There's so many on Instagram. What is the number one place to put money for marketing for marketing? Where are you going to put money into for marketing?
So I think there's a lot of different places. And I know I keep saying this, but I do think it's so different for each type of segment of client too. So I think one of the traditional spaces, especially when you're starting out, is to get yourself, figure out like if you're on Wedding Wire or you need to be on Style Me Pretty or where your audience is. So think of investing some money just to get your name out there and start collecting reviews, I think is really important. Where else can you invest your money? Press. I think press can be a huge drive for any business, whether you're starting out or you're seasoned. I think it's launched a lot of brands that I've seen over the years because they've kind of established themselves in a certain place in the market. So I do think investing in styled shoots and that sort of thing, it's kind of, people feel very differently about style shoots. Like, I think they can be really phenomenal, and then I think they can have another turn to them as well, because you're essentially investing sometimes your time and product. And if you're a florist, like, that's a massive expense for a small business owner to undertake. So really kind of play with that a little bit, but I do think some sort of investing in your work is really important. And I actually know a lot of wedding planners who will hire their own photographers to shoot their work on the day of a wedding, opposed to relying on, because maybe your styles don't align with the photographer if you're starting out that they've hired too. So I think or get good at your own and, you know, put them into Lightroom and do something special with them. But
that's probably a hot tip for a photographer too.
Yeah.
If they want to like shooting details in rooms for people.
Yeah.
For their sites and stuff. Could be pretty.
100%. Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay, next and last question for you. Rapid fire, even though it's not that rapid because I'm scrolling for these questions. The next question is best practices in the branding and marketing world. What are some of the best practices you've seen?
Sure. So we already talked a little bit. So consistency is huge. So this is kind of probably a little bit of a reiteration of what we've talked about, but consistency, finding out what your difference is and being able to communicate that. What else is really important? I think investing when needed. So I think you need to invest in a brand and website designer once you're at a certain level of your business and trust them to do their job. Make sure everything is professional and polished. Really invest the time and the money into it, because I think there's massive payoffs, and really speak to the person that you are wanting to work with and get their results. Like, ask them what's a typical expectation, because whatever you do, like, there should be results when it comes to your brand and your marketing and your website design. It's not something that you're paying for and you're not seeing anything back from, you know?
It also gives you confidence.
Oh, so much confidence.
Like, once you feel like you have a badass brand, you can't wait to share it. And so you're posting more than once a day, ideally, and you're getting, like, you're just putting so much more work into it because you're so happy with it, right?
And I think you're more confident to ask for higher prices too. Like, we see such a peak of clients, and one of the things that excites me the most is, like, say we launch and then a month later they're basically like, I booked 5 clients within launch and I've made back what I invested in you, like 5 times over. You know what I mean? I think it gives you that confidence so that you feel legit and you feel like everything aligns with the level of service that you're providing, and you feel better about, no, this is my price. And I think once you're really firm and strong with that, that person on the other side really sees that value, and they're like, okay, sure.
Yeah. No,
you know what I mean? And hand over all their money.
I agree. That's good. So what's the
Did
process?
that even answer the question?
That answered the process. Yeah. That answered the question, right?
Best practices. Sure.
I think we've talked a lot about best practices. So it's like, just rewind your podcast.
Yeah.
We've got it all back there. But after someone has kind of signed on with you, and then they've made the switch and they've got this beautiful new brand now, how involved are you after the process? Are you guys like doing check-ins? Can people come back to you for check-ins?
All the time. Yeah. So we want to be adaptable and be able to pivot, because we don't live in a world where everything is perfect all the time. So we're totally an open book that way. We have worked with some clients where we'll build in like a 30-day fee into their package, which is actually really cool. So basically we audit everything after they launch. We see what went really well and maybe what needs to be tweaked a little bit, and that way we can be really responsive and make little subtle tweaks that really impact kind of their conversion rates and what's happening in their business. And then other times clients are completely hands off until they're ready for a refresh in 2 to 3 years. And then other times we hear from clients on a monthly basis who always want updates and always want to update their work, and they decide they're doing like a sub brand to what they're doing right now. And so I think for a lot of our clients, we're sometimes developing like 3 or 4 websites or brands for them throughout kind of a few years time. So it's nice. Those are my favorites because it's just nice to stay involved. I feel like you get to know the person so well and understand what they're all about, and then kind of grow with them, which is
that's so nice, because you get to create the connection and then see the reward that they get from.
Then they have more money,
and everybody's smiling,
everybody's happy, and I think there's just that level of trust. Like I think when you hire a brand and website designer, it's more than just hiring an agency or a freelancer. I think you really have to understand what they're doing for you and give them trust. Like really hand over the reins if you can, because I think what you will receive in the end product will far exceed your expectations. I think there's a big strategy component that shouldn't be ignored. Like every decision that someone makes for your brand should be backed up by a reason. It's not just like, I think black works because it's cute or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? I think there has to be reasons of why a designer does one thing or the other.
This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been so much fun. I could go on and on all day. I love this topic. I will not keep you all day, but before I let you go, I would like you to ask our audience a question.
Yeah.
Something that you might have been wondering.
Sure. So I'm curious to know directly from the wedding industry and vendors is, do you find you're getting more traffic from your Instagram than you are your website? Like, how do you really see those conversions? And are you seeing a connection of where people are coming from? And are you tracking those analytics? Because I hear so many people are getting a lot of DMs from Instagram, and then kind of things are kind of falling off on their website. Is that because their website isn't as strong as their Instagram, because that's where they're spending all of their time? So I'm really interested to hear from people about kind of where their leads are coming from.
It's been a pleasure to have you,
Thank you so
Ashley
much.
and Malone,
Yes.
Creative Agency. How do people contact you if they want to chat with you more about branding, marketing, website design, anything?
Sure. So they can go to our website, so ashleyandmalone.com, or they can shoot me an email at hello@ashleymalone.com. If they're interested in that client audit, so the ideal client audit, I actually have a document, a PDF that I'd be happy to send to anybody who emails me. And other than that, Instagram, so at Ashley Malone. And that's it.
Love it. Well, reach out, everyone, if you are in the market, because she is absolutely lovely and knows her shit. She's an expert.
Fingers crossed.
So thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll see you back again.
Yeah.
Never know.
Cheers.
Let's cheers, my dear.
Thank you.